Let me tell you, there's no better place to hear the truth than from a man in a chair with a razor at his throat. I've heard the secrets of CEOs, the regrets of fathers, the quiet pain of men who never thought they'd cry until they did. But sometimes a story haunts you. It cuts deeper than the closest shave. This one isn't mine. It belongs to a man who sat in my chair not long ago. A man in a perfect suit with a perfect watch and a soul in pieces. His name? I've changed it. But everything else you're about to hear, every single word, is true. His name was Alexander Croft, a real estate billionaire who measured the world in percentages and property lines. And the place that changed him? Just a little coffee shop in a forgotten corner of Brooklyn. A shop run by a woman named Elena Santiago, where the coffee was hot, the stories raw, and the future of an entire neighborhood hung by a thread. This isn't just about urban redevelopment. It's about redemption. The story is about what happens when a man who thought he owned everything is forced to face something he never understood: community. So grab a mug, lean in close. It doesn't start with a bang, but with the soft thud of a hammer, nailing an eviction notice to the front door of a place that meant everything to people who had little else. And trust me, what happens next, you won't forget. The hammer's sound tore through the quiet of a Brooklyn morning. It wasn't the sound of building, but of ending. A man in a uniform was nailing a white sheet of paper to the weathered wooden door of the Crossroads Café. The paper, with final eviction notice in bold, looked like a paper indictment, a cold full stop to decades of memories, laughter, and the aroma of roasted coffee. Elena Santiago stood frozen on the sidewalk, staring at the notice. Her shoulders sagged slightly under the weight of defeat, but her back remained straight. Her eyes held no pleading, only the condensed sorrow of an entire neighborhood. Around her, a small group of locals stood in silence. There was the old barber from across the street, who'd sipped coffee here every morning for 20 years. A young girl clutched her school bag, where she'd done homework every afternoon at the table by the window. Young artists saw the cafe as their office, gallery, and safe haven for dreams. To them, the Crossroads Cafe wasn't just a business. It was the neighborhood's living room, the thread tying together seemingly disparate lives. And now that thread was about to snap. Lot E7, 4,600 square feet. Potential for a 30-story tower with a projected 28% return in 3 years. To me in Manhattan, it was just numbers. A good deal, a rational choice. The clearance order was issued with a single click. No different from deleting a line on a spreadsheet. I didn't see the faces. I didn't hear the stories. I saw only an asset not yet fully tapped. I had no idea I just lit a match to the heart of a community. So what turned a ruthless business decision into a journey of redemption? How did a Wall Street titan who trusted only numbers get transformed by a tiny cafe and ordinary people? What happened inside that coffee shop to make him confront his own company, the man he'd become? And most importantly, can a single act of compassion truly stand against the might of money and greed? To find the answers, to witness an unrelenting battle between community and capitalism, and to discover that a place's true value lies not in its land, but in the souls it nurtures, we must go back. 3 months before that hammer struck, before the eviction notice in tears, the story didn't begin on a Brooklyn sidewalk, but on the 50th floor of a glass and steel tower in Manhattan. This was the world of Alexander Alex Croft, a kingdom built on silence, where the air was filtered and the temperature always controlled. From his office, Alex could look down on New York City, but he didn't see people or stories. He saw a 3D map of assets, a giant chessboard where he moved billion-dollar pieces. In a boardroom where leather chairs cost as much as a family's yearly rent, Alex stood before a massive screen. He was a general presenting a battle plan. His bespoke suit was more armor than clothing. His voice was a tool, sharp, precise, devoid of emotion. The project on the screen had a glossy name, the Apex at Bushwick. A dazzling 3D model appeared, showcasing glass condo towers, rooftop gardens, and upscale shops. By clearing Lot E7, Alex said, his voice echoing in the hushed room, "We'll remove the current structures and minimize the area's potential. We're not just selling apartments, we're selling a lifestyle." Projected return on investment 28%. The investors nodded. They didn't hear flatten, they heard 28%. To them, Bushwick's old brick buildings were just numbers on a spreadsheet, obstacles to profit's flow. As Alex finished his pitch and snapped his laptop shut, the deal was sealed. For him in the room, Lot E7's story was over. But at that same moment, just a few miles east, in the heart of Lot E7, a very different story was unfolding. Here, there was no glass or steel, only the warm, rustic brick walls of the Crossroads Café. No controlled silence, but a symphony of life. The hiss of the espresso machine, the clink of cups, the hum of laughter and chatter. The air wasn't filtered, but thick with the scent of freshly roasted coffee mingled with baking waffles. This was Elena Santiago's world. She didn't stand before a giant screen. She stood behind the counter, her hands moving with practiced, loving care. She didn't call her customers consumers. She called them by name. "Morning, David. The usual," she said to the barber. "Easy, Leo. You put too much milk in Susan's latte," she gently chided her young employee. Leo, a 17-year-old with guarded eyes, nodded apologetically. Elena just smiled. "It's okay, kid. Everyone needs a start. Try another one." This cafe was her legacy, but it was more. It was a statement, a declaration that everyone deserves a second chance. That's why she hired kids like Leo, one society had written off. She didn't just give them jobs, she gave them purpose, respect, and sometimes, most crucially, trust. She surveyed her cafe. Every table told a story. In one corner, a young writer typed furiously on an old laptop, his empty coffee cup ignored. By the window, art students debated a project with passion. Elena's cafe was an ecosystem, a beating heart pumping life into the neighborhood. She didn't sell coffee, she sold connection. These two worlds, one on Manhattan's 50th floor, one on Brooklyn's ground, were a subway ride apart, but might as well have been on different planets. They existed in parallel, oblivious to each other. And they had no idea that a decision made in a glass tower, a cold click on a spreadsheet, was about to collide with them with unstoppable force, testing everything they believed in. The collision didn't begin with a crash, but with the soft slam of a luxury black car's door outside the Crossroads Cafe. 2 weeks after that fateful Manhattan meeting, two young men in identical suits stepped out. They were perfect echoes of a younger Alex Croft, ambitious, sharp, with an impatient, almost contemptuous air toward the world around them. They hadn't come for coffee. They were the vanguard, sent to survey and size up the enemy. They entered the cafe, and the warm atmosphere chilled instantly. Laughter and chatter faded. They offered no greeting, just scanned the room with appraisers' eyes. Pulling out tablets, they snapped photos of the cafe's corners, its brick walls, even the customers sitting there, as if everything were merely inventory to be cataloged before liquidation. Elena, with her professional smile, approached. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" she asked. One of them glanced at her, a fleeting look. "No need. We're just working," he replied, his voice cold and detached, then returned to his tablet. Their presence was a wordless proclamation, an invasion. They didn't stay long, but after they left, a cloud of unease settled over the cafe. Rumors spread like smoldering embers. "They're selling the building. They'll tear it down." Fear, once a whisper, became a stark reality. But the Bushwick community wasn't one to surrender easily. They fought back. Days later, homemade posters appeared on lampposts and shop windows. "Save the Crossroads, Brooklyn's not for sale." Small community meetings convened inside the cafe, people brainstorming desperately for solutions. For Leo, posters weren't enough. He felt a burning anger, the helplessness of a young man watching his world be torn apart by invisible forces. One night, he and a few friends decided they needed to do something bigger. They needed to shout. With spray cans, they turned the blank brick wall beside the cafe into a canvas of defiance. In bold, vibrant, furious colors, giant letters blazed under the streetlights. Community, not condos. News of the resistance and vandalism reached Alex Croft swiftly. In his office, he studied photos of the posters and graffiti. To him, this wasn't a community's voice. It was a nuisance, a delay in the timeline, an inefficiency skewing projected numbers. And that graffiti, it was a direct challenge to his ownership. His jaw tightened, a cold glint sparked in his eyes. He was done delegating. "If the rats won't leave," he muttered to himself, "the cat has to handle it." The next day, his sleek black car glided to a stop outside the cafe, its presence silencing the street's usual hum. Alex stepped out. Tall, imposing, his suit seemed out of place here. He glanced at the graffiti with disgust. then pushed through the door into the Crossroads Café. The room held its breath. Leo, wiping the counter, instantly recognized the powerful man from articles he'd read. Anger and fear surged within him. This was the enemy. Ignoring Elena's advice, he rushed from behind the counter, planting himself in front of Alex. Though a head shorter, he didn't back down. "You here to destroy our only home?" he growled, fists clenched. Alex looked down at the teenager, his eyes emotionless, carrying only the irritation of a man interrupted. He was about to deliver a cutting remark to brush the boy aside. But before he could, a figure moved. Elena stepped forward, gentle but resolute, positioning herself between them. She placed a hand on Leo's tense arm. "Easy, Leo," she said, her voice soft but commanding. Then she turned to Alex Croft, the man holding her life's fate in his hands. She met his gaze, fearless. "Welcome to the Crossroads," she said, clear and poised. "What can I get you?" A long moment of silence stretched through the cafe. The air was thick with anticipation. Alex Croft, a man used to commanding obedience, found himself in an unexpected position. He'd come to crush a rebellion that's to assert dominance. He wasn't prepared for an invitation. His simmering anger lost its target, like a massive wave crashing against a soft cliff, not breaking but quietly absorbed. He looked at Elena Santiago, then down at the teenager, glaring at him with defiance. Leaving now would admit he'd lost control. Staying, in some way, was an attempt to reclaim it. He made a split-second decision. "A black coffee," he said, his voice still cold, but the menace gone, replaced by an unwanted curiosity. "Leo," Elena said softly, not breaking eye contact with Alex, "make the gentleman our best cup." Leo, still seething, yielded to his respect for Elena. He returned to the counter, the coffee grinder's hum breaking the silence. Alex sat at an empty table, feeling every eye in the cafe on him. He was uncomfortable, out of place. This wasn't his boardroom. Here, his power seemed to mean something else. Elena brought the coffee, setting it down gently. Steam and a rich aroma rose. "Our beans are roasted right here in Brooklyn," she said, a simple statement brimming with pride. "I'm not here to talk coffee, Miss Santiago," Alex said bluntly, trying to steer the conversation to his purpose. "You have to understand progress is inevitable. This area needs upgrading. My project will bring jobs, raise property values." Elena listened patiently, not interrupting. When he finished, she asked one question. "What does this progress of yours look like, Mr. Croft? Does it have room for the people who built this neighborhood? For David, the barber who's been on that corner for 50 years? For kids like Leo?" Alex glanced at Leo, carefully wiping another table. His future's up to him. "Is it?" Elena countered, her voice gentle but weighty. "A kid's future doesn't just depend on them, Mr. Croft. It depends on someone giving them a chance." She sat across from him, a bold move. "Let me tell you about Leo. 2 years ago, he was just a number in the system, a file in juvie. When he got out, no one would hire him. Stores turned him away. Families were scared. Society slapped a label on him and decided his future was set. But me," she continued, "I didn't see that label. I looked in his eyes and saw a scared kid who just wanted a different path. So I gave him a job. I taught him how to face customers, take responsibility, and most importantly, to take pride in his work, even if it's just pouring coffee." She pointed to paintings on the wall. "Now he's taking night classes in graphic design. Some of those artworks are his. He has a dream." Alex was silent. As he listened, a long-buried memory surfaced. He saw himself at 17, a poor, angry kid in a rough neighborhood not unlike this one. He recalled the owner of a small repair shop who gave him an after-school job, not out of pity, but because he saw a spark in his eyes. That man gave him his first chance, the one that led to a scholarship to Wall Street. He'd come to solve a business problem, to see numbers, obstacles. But Elena, with her simple story, forced him to see a person. Worse, in that person, he saw himself. The black coffee before him turned bitter, not from the brew, but from self-awareness. He looked at Leo, working diligently, his shirt damp with sweat. He no longer saw a rebel. He saw potential. A version of the past he'd spent a lifetime running from. The conversation ended. Alex drained his coffee in silence. He stood, pulled a $100 bill from his wallet, and left it on the counter. He didn't look at Leo, but spoke to Elena, his voice stripped of its edge, left with only weariness and something unnameable. "Thank you for the coffee, Miss Santiago." He turned and left the cafe. But this time, his stride lacked the swagger of a conqueror. It carried the weight of a man who just faced his own shadow. He climbed into his luxury car, and when the driver asked, "Back to Manhattan, sir?" Alex shook his head. "Just drive around," he said quietly. "I need to think." The sleek black luxury car drifted aimlessly through Brooklyn's streets. Inside, the silence was heavier than the air outside. The driver, a man accustomed to Alex's crisp commands, received no direction now. He just drove, passing brownstone neighborhoods, public basketball courts, and corner bodegas. To him, they were just streets. But for Alex Croft, seated in the back, it was a journey through time. Each corner, each passing face, summoned a ghost from a past he'd spent a lifetime burying. He built his empire on a steel rule: eliminate emotion, erase weakness. He taught himself poverty was failure, empathy an unnecessary burden in the race to the top. He'd fled the scrawny, angry young Alex who'd sworn never to let anyone control his fate. To do that, he'd become the men that boy despised. Suited tycoons who saw neighborhoods like this as numbers, chances to raise and rebuild something flashier, soulless. Elena's coffee and Leo's story weren't just a reminder, they were a slap. They forced him to face a bitter truth: in escaping his past, he'd become its enemy. He, once given a chance by a kind stranger, was now set to strip that chance from a boy just like him. The irony was cruel. It made his skyscrapers, profit reports, and vast wealth feel cheap, meaningless. He'd bought the world, but sold his soul in the bargain. The car crossed the Brooklyn Bridge, heading toward Manhattan's glittering towers. But as Alex gazed at the skyline, he didn't see his power. He saw a golden cage. Back to the office, he finally said, his voice regaining its resolve. "Call an emergency board meeting, now." Hours later, he stood in that cold boardroom again. Across from him were his partners, men who shared his old mindset. They arrived annoyed at the sudden summons. "What's the emergency, Alex?" One, an older investor named Richard, asked. "Trouble with the Bushwick project?" "Yes," Alex replied, his voice eerily calm. "There's a problem. The problem is we're not doing it anymore." The room fell into stunned silence, followed by Richard's scoffing laugh. "What are you talking about? Kidding? It's our fattest deal this quarter." "I'm not kidding," Alex said. "Plans have changed. We're not flattening that area. We're investing in it." Skepticism turned to anger. Investing? Another snapped. In rundown bodegas and a no-name cafe? "Alex, have you lost it? We run a hedge fund, not a charity." "Maybe the difference isn't as big as we think," Alex countered. "You're letting emotions cloud your judgment," Richard said, his tone patronizing. "A few locals whining and you go soft? Where's the Wall Street wolf I know?" Alex met each man's eyes. That wolf's still here, but it just learned a new trick. He stepped closer to the massive table. "You see bricks and mortar. You calculate their worth, but you've overlooked that lot's greatest asset, the potential of the people inside it." "Enough!" Richard slammed the table. "The plan goes forward as is. Either you fall in line, or the board votes to strip you of control over this project." It was an ultimatum. They were challenging him, backing him into a corner. They thought he'd crumble at the threat of losing power and money. They were wrong. They didn't understand that before them was no longer yesterday's Alex Croft. "Fine," Alex said, a cold smile flickering. "Then vote. But first, hear me out. I'll use my personal shares, every cent of my own fortune if I have to fight you. I'll buy out this entire project myself." He paused, letting his threat sink in. "The Apex project is dead," he declared. "Welcome to the crossroads. Anyone not on board, the door's right there." Silence enveloped the room again, but this time it wasn't shock. It was defeat. The other wolves in the pack realized the alpha hadn't just changed, it had evolved. The first battle was over, but the real fight to build something new from the ashes was just beginning. Days after the stormy board meeting, Alex Croft returned to the Crossroads Café. This time, no sleek black car. He walked from the nearby subway wearing a simple jacket. He wanted to arrive not as a tycoon, but as a person. The cafe's atmosphere had shifted. Hostility was gone, replaced by a tense, expectant silence. Word of the project's pause had spread, but no one knew what came next. He found Elena cleaning behind the counter. Seeing him, she didn't smile, just nodded cautiously and gestured to an empty table. "I'm guessing you're not here for coffee," she said, her voice steady as ever. "Not entirely," Alex replied. "I'm here with a proposal. I've stopped the Apex project. This block won't be demolished." Relief flickered across Elena's face, but it quickly gave way to wariness. So, what's your plan? Turn us into an authentic feature for your new complex? A decoration for the rich? Her sharp question showed she knew how the world worked. Alex realized a simple fix wouldn't do. He couldn't just be a benevolent savior. That in its own way was disrespectful. That was my idea once, he admitted frankly. But I was wrong. You were right. This place isn't mine to buy or hand out, but I can do something else. He pulled a pen and a napkin, his strategist instinct kicking in. Do you know what a community cooperative is, Miss Santiago? Right there, at that worn wooden table, Alex Croft began sketching a plan bolder than any skyscraper. He didn't talk charity. He talked investment, leverage, ownership. Here's the plan, he said, his voice now carrying the energy of a creator, not a conqueror. My fund, as a partner, will buy this entire lot. We'll be the creditor, not permanent owners. He drew squares and arrows. We'll form a new entity, the Crossroads Cooperative. Its board will be you, David the barber, the bakery owner, and representatives of long-term tenants. You'll make the decisions. We'll renovate existing shops, he continued, and build new spaces on vacant lots for lease. All profits from those leases won't go to me. They'll do one thing, slowly pay off the debt to my fund at zero interest, bit by bit, year by year, until one day the debt's cleared. On that day, this entire neighborhood, every brick, every square foot, will belong to the cooperative, to your community. Elena listened, stunned. She'd braced for a charity pitch. She wasn't prepared for empowerment. This man wasn't just saving them from destruction. He was giving them tools to control their own fate, to build wealth for future generations. He was handing them the keys to the kingdom. But why? She finally asked, her voice thick with skepticism. What's in it for you? Alex looked out the window where Leo was joking with a customer. Return on investment, he said softly. You taught me there are returns no spreadsheet can capture. I'm betting on human potential. It's the best deal I've ever made. A week later, the Crossroads Café was packed. Not for coffee, but for the first community meeting. Alex Croft, Wall Street titan, stood before a whiteboard beside Elena Santiago, a small cafe owner. He wasn't talking stocks or bonds. He was explaining sustainable finance, collective ownership, and how to turn a struggling neighborhood into an asset owned by its residents. The room buzzed with excitement, some confusion, and fierce hope. For the first time, they weren't victims of change. They were its architects. In the front row, Leo listened intently, scribbling notes. When Alex finished, Leo raised his hand first. He didn't ask a simple question. He asked about profit-sharing structures and long-term reinvestment plans. Alex looked at the boy, and a genuine, unguarded smile spread across his face. The old wolf had found a protege, and Brooklyn's quiet revolution had just begun. Time in Bushwick was no longer measured by eviction threats, but by bricks laid, fresh paint applied, and growing smiles. The Crossroads Project wasn't just a plan on paper. It had become a vibrant reality. Alex Croft kept his promise. He didn't just pour in money, he invested his heart and mind. Neighborhood residents, once consumed by rent worries, now gathered in Elena's Café every Tuesday night for finance classes, led by Alex and his team. He taught them about cash flow, reading balance sheets, the difference between assets and liabilities. He was giving them the language of power, once used against them. Old shops were revitalized, not demolished, preserving their historic charm. Vacant lots became small art studios, community gardens. Alex's fund offered microloans for new business ideas. Soon the neighborhood didn't just survive, it thrived. Through it all, a greater transformation unfolded. The relationship between Alex and Elena transcended business partnership. They found a perfect balance. He was the strategic brain, she the empathetic heart. He saw numbers, she saw the faces behind them. They worked, built, and healed each other's wounds together. Love came not as a romantic storm, but as warm morning sunlight, gentle and enduring. 5 years later, a celebration was held in the small plaza at the neighborhood's heart, with the Crossroads Café as its centerpiece. The area now pulsed with life. Gone were for lease signs, replaced by unique shops owned by locals. Elena Santiago, now president of the Crossroads Cooperative, stood on a small stage, her face radiant with joy. Beside her was Alex, not in a suit but a simple shirt, holding her hand. He looked at the crowd, not as a tycoon, but as a community member. In the crowd was Leo, No longer the angry teen, he was a confident 22-year-old, owner of a small graphic design studio across from the cafe. He laughed, showing other teens how to use design software on a laptop. He'd become the role model he once longed for. As the ceremony ended, Alex and Alina strolled together. They gazed at their achievement, not a glass tower, but a reborn community. "Do you ever regret it?" Alina asked, meeting his eyes. "The 28% profit you gave up?" Alex smiled, a truly warm smile. He pointed to kids playing in a newly built playground. "Look at that," he said. "That's our profit." It's priceless. The story of Alex Croft and the Crossroads Café is a powerful reminder for us all, especially those at the peak of success. It proves the greatest wealth isn't what you own, but what you build and share. Alex came to Bushwick seeking land value, but found human value. He learned the most enduring profit comes not from exploitation, but from nurturing. Your strength, intellect, and talent can be the world's greatest tools. You can use them to build higher walls, guarding your own kingdom. Or you can build bridges, connecting worlds, giving others the chance you once craved. You don't need to be a billionaire to make change. Start in your neighborhood. Support a local business. Listen to a story you've never heard. See potential where others see struggle. And if the story of the Crossroads Café has inspired you, please like, share, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel. Because here, we believe each of us, through our own actions, can invest in a better future.